You're listening to BioTalk with Rich Bendis, the only podcast focused on the BioHealth Capital Region. Each episode, we'll talk to leaders in the industry to break down the biggest topics happening today in BioHealth.
Hi, this is Rich Bendis. I'm your host of BioTalk, where we interview great new entrepreneurs from the region, established companies, and leaders in the BioHealth capital. And today, I'm privileged to have Carolyn Yarina, who's the CEO and co-founder of Sisu Global Health, who we got to meet probably almost 5 years ago. And we'll talk about how we met and what the experience has been since then. So, Carolyn, welcome to BioTalk.
Thank you very much. I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah. One of the ways we start normally is most listeners have never heard of you, other than all of those people that you're doing business with. And also your company, since a lot of the stuff you do is international. So we're going to talk first by introducing you personally before we introduce the company to our listeners.
Great. Well, my name is Carolyn Yarina. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Sisu Global Health. I'm not a local Baltimorean, but I'm from Michigan, grew up on a sheep farm in the middle of nowhere, all the way to chemical engineering degree from the University of Michigan. I founded my first company while in college, was named Entrepreneur of the Year while getting my chemical engineering degree. I've raised $100,000 of cash and in-kind services for a nonprofit focused on rural mobile clinics in India. And then after moving to India, realized the opportunity for building a medical device that was focused on emerging markets, saw the opportunity of the growing middle class, growing expectations for higher quality healthcare, and also saw that large medical device companies were trying to tap into that growing middle class. But how they were doing so was by taking US, European equipment, pairing off features, making it cheaper, rather than actually designing medical devices for that market. And so that is the story and origin of founding Sisu Global.
Yeah, short and sweet, but also you developed your desire to be an entrepreneur early in your life, which is, some people find it later, but finding that in college is very refreshing, and also you've continued your passion.
I did. It's been quite a journey since then, and really exciting to see that grow and flourish under Sisu Global.
And one of the things you mentioned, which we haven't had a lot on BioTalk, is you said you co-founded Sisu. So that means there's another founder. So how did you find a co-founder? And then the other thing people would be interested in is, how do you do separation of duties when you have two people who are co-founders?
Well, at this point, we're 14 people across 3 different continents. And so I've grown quite a ways. But definitely when we started, we were a 3-person organization. I've been really lucky to have really great co-founders. So a bit of that story is I founded a nonprofit working on rural mobile clinics in India. My co-founder, Jillian, had previously founded a medical device design firm focused on Ghana. And we were able to combine those skill sets and those expertise to create Sisu Global Health, a more complete organization that has that combination of business and also of technology design and development.
And then if you look at separating your duties today, now that you've grown to 14, what does Jillian focus on most and what are you focused on most?
So I'm the CEO, so I focus on
everything.
Everything. But a lot of the business partnerships negotiations, I've negotiated deals with the largest MedPharma distributor in Kenya, with the largest Kenya-based international NGO called AMREF that we're really excited to launch a new partnership with, and have done recruitment and building of a really amazing team. So we wouldn't have been able to get here without them. And Jillian has been able to bring her expertise in product design and development. She is the primary inventor of Hemofuse and our other portfolio technologies to bring those to market. And having that partnership means that we tag team. So while I'm here in the US, she's actually in Kenya at the moment. You can even see her on TV in Kenya. And we're able to tag team that leadership.
Well, it's a great separation of duties, and it seems like it fits both of your skill sets very well. We got to know each other when BioHealth Innovation and Johns Hopkins and some other partners put together a healthcare accelerator, Dream It, in Baltimore in 2015, and we had companies apply. We selected, I think in your cohort, was it 9 or 7?
So it's hard to remember.
I'm trying to remember,
but
we had somewhere around 8 companies in the cohort. Each of them got some money. We became equity partners in your company when you got selected there. And then you went through a 3-month accelerator program with DreamIt. So tell us a little bit about that experience and how did it work for you?
Yeah, so DreamIt was a really wonderful experience for us. Prior to that, we had been bootstrapping, so working side jobs to support our core job, had a big win from some backing and funding from USAID, but we're really getting off our feet. So we moved over to Baltimore looking for a new home for our company, looking for those international resources that are provided in this area, being close to DC, being an international port. And when we started the DreamIt program, it was great to be integrated and have that plunge into the ecosystem that with BioHealth innovation, with Johns Hopkins University, and that DreamIt programming really allowed Baltimore to accept us as one of their own.
What's neat is that you came from Michigan, went into an accelerator program, and here you are 5 years later, and you're still in Baltimore.
We are. We're proud to be a Baltimore-based international organization.
So what keeps you here?
What keeps us here is a variety of things. So we found Baltimore to be a home for us out of the funding that we've raised of about $2.9 million of investment backing. The majority of that has come from this region. We've had different investors that are putting their money where their mouth is, as it were, and supporting us. We've had great mentors and great relationships that we've been able to establish with those people who either sit down with us on a monthly basis or on our board or help us grow and develop. And the resources with the Maryland Department of Commerce, I don't think we could ask for a better home for Sisu Global to set our feet as we export product from our port and grow internationally.
Well, you are a great ambassador for the BioHealth Capital Region in Baltimore, so continue to do so, and we will continue to support you. But also, you developed an early passion when you were in college for emerging economies around the world when you looked at India and then Kenya and Ghana. So tell us a little bit about how you developed this passion and then with your partner came up with identifying the needs around some of these medical technologies that have become the mainstay of Sisu.
Right now, what inspires us is, and what I observed when I was in India and as we've expanded across Africa, is that right now 80% of the world's medical devices are made for 10% of the world's population. That means that there's quite a gap for technologies made for emerging markets for that growing middle class. And have been inspired in areas where there's a lot of money being spent, a lot of opportunity. Actually, by the end of 2019, it's expected that 10% of all R&D dollars in the medical and pharmaceutical sector will be going towards development of technologies for emerging markets. And for Sisu, we've been able to be at the forefront of that, of identifying medical devices, identifying needs. And we're excited to have launched a successful product in hemofuse that I'm sure we'll get into some details on, but also builds a pipeline and a platform that we can use to implement additional technologies that we can sell and scale and create a very high growth business.
I'm glad you're keeping that passion because there's a need around the world for what you do. And there's a term that they use called reverse innovation, which you're probably familiar with, which means you're developing technologies in these emerging markets where they don't have a lot of money to pay for them. There's not a big reimbursement system for them. But the technologies are applicable not only there, but could be applicable in developed markets. So that's one of the things we're going to talk about is how you've developed this reverse innovation technology over in Africa that may have applicability in developed countries around the world.
Absolutely. We're building world-class medical devices that are based on new research, new developments, and how can we leverage that with the criteria around devices that are cost-effective and around value-based care, as you hear a lot in the U.S. as well, enable greater access and task shifting so that you can have a variety of skill sets and variety of clinical team members actually operate the devices. And those criteria of our products definitely apply to areas in the U.S. as well. Hemofuse, our flagship product, which is a device that works on the idea your own blood is better than someone else's and allows a clinical team, if a patient is bleeding internally, to actually retransfuse a patient's own blood, called autotransfusion or self-transfusion, and give that patient back their own blood from that internal bleeding. That's a device that has applications in emerging markets, in military, in U.S. settings, whether that be in humans and also in animals. for veterinary applications, you can see the broad areas where we can expand into. The reason we've chose emerging markets as our focus is because that's where the market growth and opportunity is for our products. We expect to see them grow worldwide, but the markets and the spending, the development of medical devices that are actually made for emerging markets is high growth. We've attracted attention and had meetings with the CEO of GE Healthcare Africa. We've been featured by GE at the World Health Assembly, received fellowships. Medtronic has even used us in DEX as technology that leapfrogs their own. And so we've been able to have that platform and growth for emerging markets and for global presence.
One of the challenges I would imagine is in emerging markets that are unregulated, as well as you really don't have the strong economic backgrounds of some of the countries or regions that you're in. So tell us a little bit, and the listeners, about what the challenges are you've had to overcome to take a high technology medical device into a market. And it's really pioneering with an educational sell that you have to do. So what are the challenges you've had to overcome, and how did you overcome them?
So to share a little bit to our listeners as well, a bit of context of where we're at. So our flagship product, Hemofuse, is being sold in Africa through Kenya's largest med pharma distributor in partnership with Amref, whose major NGO and health development organization that will grow our scale and scope. We've been able to enter into markets, but why our technologies are so important is because challenges like there's a shortage of 50% of the blood that's needed in Kenya and across Africa. And I would say, is in terms of challenges, is getting our products scaled, getting that global reach, establishing the right partnerships like we have in Kenya has taken a lot of growth and development to build those relationships and build those scale. What I'd say has not been a challenge has been in terms of finding on the economics or the finances. I think there's a misconception sometimes that in Africa that maybe there's not enough money that's there able to be spent, but something we're doing with Sisu Global Health is breaking some of those misconceptions and showing that we can have a high growth business that can provide better than market rate returns to our investors and create technologies where cost is important, but we bake that into the design process so that it's not a challenge, so that we can have those high margins and high growth with our technologies, even though it's in a market that has heavy NGO involvement in space as well.
And you mentioned you have a distributor who markets your product. Who is a typical customer that they sell to? Yeah. And then also, when you charge for services, is there a device and then you have a disposable that continues the sales process with Hemofuse?
Absolutely. So our distributors sell to the local hospitals in Kenya. So we've narrowed down our target. There's 1,700 hospitals across Kenya. And we've narrowed that down to those hospitals that perform major surgeries and focused on the middle class. And so that's about 435 hospitals within Kenya. And of those hospitals, they perform surgeries, but they may sometimes struggle with blood. So our distributor sells our device in a packet of either one reusable device with 25 disposable filter and accessory kits, or an introductory pack of one device and 5 filter and accessory kits that's about 30% more expensive. But the total end cost to that hospital in a per use basis, so multiply that by 25 to get the per pack cost, is about $200 per use, which is comparable to the cost of donor blood. Donor blood costs about $100 to process. Our device can salvage up to 3 units. So you can see the cost savings that are available with our product to that hospital.
And then what about sterility and cleanliness and the environment that you have to work in?
We're a medical device company, so of that supply chain and those processes and those standards are really important in our device. So there's the single-use component, which is in a sterile peel pouch, assembled at our local Harvard Design and Innovations in Baltimore, and is shipped in that sterile pack, and then we have the device that needs to be reused and autoclaved in between uses. And so the hospital does that auto cleaning and sterilization themselves up for those 25 times, and then when they buy a new pack, they get a new device and the sterile filter and accessory kits. And of course, it's going into theater in terms of use. And so you have that sterile field, you have those highly trained experts in their medical fields who are operating and using the device.
And you're focused in Kenya, so how is this scalable to other countries and other continents at this time?
For our scale of our product, Kenya is our beachhead in terms of that market. We've been able to prove our model, prove our economics, and prove the scalability of our company. But for the next stage is, as we're also raising a Series A at the moment, we will be scaling not only in Africa, but also into Southeast Asia as well. We've started assessing distributors that would grow that market as well. And we also will be scaling product lines. So introducing additional products that will capitalize on this platform that we've developed and these partnerships with Hemofuse that we'll be able to leverage. And of course, it's all about economics. And so making sure that we use the relationships we have to their fullest ability.
So you consider this a platform technology, that you have other spin-off products and devices that you can use from that platform. So give us some examples, some of the other uses you see for your platform.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a portfolio of 5 products. We have 4 patents in total on our devices. Some of them are in trade secret as well. And our second product is also a centrifuge that can work with or without electricity in the laboratory sector. So if you look at in emerging markets where money is being spent, you look at surgery, particularly, you look at the laboratory space, and that's where we're focused on. We look at criteria of what are the needs, what is the infrastructure, and where is money currently being spent that we can tap into. And then we have a broader net that we've cast through the relationships we've built over these past 5 years to identify additional technologies that we want to license and bring into our system as well. So we've identified some really exciting technologies that we are looking to also launch in the scope of our next round of funding.
And you mentioned the Series A, but as we go back 5 years, I remember some of our initial meetings, we were discussing whether or not this was a nonprofit company or a for-profit company. And I think you've determined and proven that this has a for-profit scalable model, even though some of the services you're providing could almost be looked at as a nonprofit environment in the emerging markets.
I would say that in terms of that discussion, that's something that we look at a lot in terms of the perception around Sisu Global. And since our founding, don't even consider ourselves a social venture. We are a company that is looking at solving a very big need, solving a very big problem, but we are fully a for-profit organization. Sometimes with looking at the particular market we're serving, there can be perception about us being a nonprofit. And I know that's something that we have heard, but as is established by who we have backing from, great investors like Camden Partners, Revolution's Rise of the Rest,
right.
Seed Fund.
Steve Case.
Steve Case, exactly. We've been able to show that we are a high-growth, scalable, for-profit organization.
Great. And then you've mentioned you've raised about $2.9 million to date in the 5 years through family, friends, early-stage investors, angels, all kinds of people. And I also know that you've been able to win some money through some of the competitions that you have applied for. So you've won many awards. Let's talk a little bit to the listeners. And we're talking to Carolyn Yarina, CEO and co-founder of Sisu Global Health, who's had a lot of successes in getting notoriety for Sisu in competitions around the country.
One of our investors jokingly calls us the award-winningest startup of Baltimore. Mm-hmm. But we've been proud and grateful to have some really great recognition and backing that's given us a foothold to share what we do and share more about our organization. And for our growth, we've been able to build our company and our credibility. When we first started, and I mentioned we were working side jobs to support our core job, which was this when we first started. We were able to win competitions and awards that gave us some of that backing and credibility to be able to approach some of our investors in like the accelerator program and leverage that to each stage grow our credibility, grow our investment, and grow our company.
And what are some of the awards that you're most proud of that you've won?
Well, some of the awards and features include features we were on 60 Minutes in USA Today. We've had awards like winning Rise of the Rest stop here in Baltimore with Steve Case. We've received recognition from GE Healthcare and Mass General Hospital, including being featured at the World Health Assembly by them, and a variety of other awards and features that would bore our listeners if I went on listing them.
No. I think you should be very proud of what you accomplished. But the other thing is that it also says that marketing, branding, and public relations is extremely important for early stage companies. And I think you've done an excellent job in getting the word out about Hemofuse and Sisu. And you have to be willing to go out and share the knowledge about what you're doing with lots of people in different environments.
Absolutely. I had a great team behind that and grateful to have some great recognition.
And one of the things we've talked about, you're going to do a Series A raise now.
Yes.
How much are you going to try to raise?
So we have a bit of a scaled raise.
Sure.
And so we're looking at $10 million would allow us to not only launch Hemofuse and scale that geographically, but launch one additional portfolio product and 2 new licensed in products so that we've identified.
And one of the elements of this raise, which I'm very familiar with, is you've applied to be at the BioHealth Capital Region Investment Conference on October 15th and 16th at AstraZeneca. And just to say, there are 107 companies, but 35 investors from around the United States who are going to get a chance for you to get exposed to. So we wish you the best of luck in that. And we know that there's a number of companies who have participated in last year's, our first annual, that have had success with the contacts they made. But I think patience and persistence is what is required by early stage entrepreneurs. Because you might make some contacts, but you might talk to people a little bit, and our listeners, of how long it takes to close deals once you've made an introduction to a potential investor to get them comfortable about actually writing a check to you.
Yeah. Well, it's funny that you mentioned patience and persistence. That's actually behind the definition of our company, Sisu. Sisu is a word that means persevering in the face of adversity, which is a descriptor of not only the people we design for, but also a core belief of our team. And in regards to raising funds, it's always a process and more of a relationship. So one of my features on USA Today, I also gave a little bit of advice on raising venture capital based on the success that we've had. And a lot of that is it's about building relationships and knowing too that also the most amount of money isn't always the most amount of help that you can bring in, and leveraging that expertise and those partnerships to grow the organization, grow the credibility, and get ourselves to the next stage. So if I was giving advice to any of those who are listening and raising capital, it's about finding those right partners who can help you in your organization beyond just the capital, and make sure that as much as they're vetting you, you're also vetting them to make sure that you're establishing the right partnership.
And I think sometimes that's referred to as smart money.
Yes, exactly.
Right. So you want smart money investors in your company. And you've done a good job to this point of getting those and good partners to work with. And I love what Sisu stands for, because way back in my early career, we helped raise some funds in Kansas, which was an emerging economy in its own right in the United States. But the funds were called Ad Astra. Right. And so it's to the stars with difficulty. And so it's somewhat the same connotation as patience and perseverance. So you have sort of the Ad Astra spirit here in Maryland.
We did. And what is Ad Astra? What is the background of that word?
Well, it stands for to the stars with difficulty.
In what language?
Latin. Yeah. And so it really related to, if you were trying to raise a fund in Kansas in 1980s, in the Midwest, I had created something called the Silicon Prairie Technology Association to play on Silicon Valley. And so we tried to use things that we thought would be relevant to bring attention to the Midwest. And Ad Astra was a fund of the Kansas Technology Enterprise Corporation, which was founded in 1986, which was like a TEDCO. Right. And TEDCO was formed, I think, in 1996. But this is too much about me and what we did. But K-Tech was modeled after the Ben Franklin partnership in Pennsylvania, which started in the late 70s and early 80s when they had to change from their Rust Belt economy to what was happening in the technology-based economy. So a little more than the listeners needed to know, but a little interesting background that takes you back 40 years in Rich Bendis' life. Anyway, so let's talk a little bit more about the future. You have 5 years behind you, but you have 50 years in front of you. So what are some of your goals, opportunities, and challenges that you have for the future?
The future for Sisu is extremely exciting, and for myself as well. I'm been excited to see Sisu grow to the heights that we've achieved of proving our model with hemofuse, but I'm even more excited for the next stages to grow organization, to scale geographically, and to scale product lines. And in those next stages, our goal is to become the medical device company for emerging markets. We are looking for investors who are listening as well to exit within 5 years after proving that commercial model of medical devices for emerging markets with at least 2 successful products across multiple geographic regions, and really change the way that people think about medical devices for emerging markets. Something I say actually in my TEDx talk is when we think about medical devices in Africa, I want to change perspective of not why, but why not do that? Why not seize the opportunity of that growing middle class, the growing expectations for higher quality healthcare? And we can really pave that way with what we're doing with Sisu Global. I'm excited about the partnerships that we've established already, those more rooted in the US, and whether that be manufacturing and mentorship and investment, but also the partnerships we've established internationally with great distribution partners who sell not only for us, but the leading brands that already exist like Medtronic and GE, and with international NGO organizations that can help on the training side of expansion so that we can introduce hemofuse in our portfolio of devices.
Sounds like a very admirable goal, but it's achievable because if you look at what's happened in 5 years, there's no reason you can't achieve your next 5-year goals, right?
Yeah, I'm extremely proud of these last 5 years. My team has been able to take our product hemofuse to market on less than 10% of the average cost to take a medical device just through regulatory in the US. And so with our next raise, we'll be able to achieve similar outsized accomplishments.
And I'd be remiss if not asking you, how has the BioHealth Capital Region in Baltimore and Maryland been for you to establish and grow your company? And how would you talk about this region to other entrepreneurs from other parts of the country or the world that might be looking for areas to grow their businesses?
The Maryland and BioHealth region has been an extremely good move for us. I think that there's not always enough understanding outside of this region about the really great resources that exist here, whether that be TEDCO or the Maryland Biotech Tax Credit or the mentorship, everything that you have as a nexus being with FDA around the corner, Johns Hopkins University, and all those relationships here. How many places can you have down the road funded by a Maryland grant fund a study that is focused on device-induced red blood cell damage with that sort of expertise? So I would recommend for anyone who is thinking about Baltimore to follow in the footsteps of some of the news and companies we've seen who have already followed similar to Sisu and moved here, that it's a great place to be and a great place to move to if you're in the biotechnology space.
Great. We hope you become one of the serial entrepreneurs that has 2, 3, and 4 startups here, which has evolved. But, we don't talk about that. There's other parts of the country in Boston, San Francisco, they talk about serial entrepreneurship, but we've had many here. And you are young in your career yet, and you have the opportunity to become one of those.
Absolutely. I have mentors who are serial entrepreneurs here. So there's definitely some talent and expertise that's already here. And I look forward to paying it forward to those who come afterwards.
That's great. Closing, let's talk about some words of wisdom for fellow entrepreneurs that you might have. And we just talked about you as an entrepreneur, but one of the other challenges is, and it's talked about from a diversity standpoint, is it more difficult being a female entrepreneur than a male entrepreneur in the world that you're working in today?
I'll break that question down a little bit in 2 parts.
Right.
So the first part, just because I think it's best to end on a few words of wisdom, is in regards to being a female entrepreneur, whether that or not that's more difficult. So one of the things is I think our accomplishment can be assessed on any scale, just as an entrepreneur, that everything that we've accomplished. Period.
Right.
And I would say that whether you're talking about gender, race, there definitely are challenges. There's plenty of studies that are out there that show how it's more difficult. The capital split is not fair at the moment. But there's quite a community that can in depth around support for women entrepreneurs by women entrepreneurs and resources. There's quite a bit of support that we've been able to tap into and grow. So even as there are downsides, it's more of understanding. And I think even our company as a whole, it's knowing what the biases are and leaning into them. So if I know what the biases are against being a female entrepreneur, if I understand and know what the biases are about being focused in Africa as a medical device company, then I can address those head on and make sure that we are building the strongest, best organization that can compete on a global stage.
Words of wisdom. You stated that well. So an entrepreneur is an entrepreneur regardless of any gender or race there is, period.
It is. But not to make light of the extra challenges that are faced by both women and by minorities. And in terms of words of wisdom, I take strength from the name of our organization and encourage others is a Finnish word meaning persevering in the face of adversity. You have to be very passionate about everything that you do. I think I've seen studies as well to say that if you want to make money, you probably should go get a high-paying corporate job, maybe join investment banking. But if you want to do something that can change the world, change your ecosystem, and build something that creates jobs, grows business, and builds an organization, that's when you should be an entrepreneur. But know that it's not easy and that you need to have Sisu.
We're very glad you took the second path there to become an entrepreneur because you actually are changing things for the better around the world. And you're just at the beginning of where you are going to be successful in expanding this into many different markets. So we have been with Carolyn Yarina, CEO and co-founder of Sisu Global Health, who's going to be at the BioHealth Capital Investment Conference, October 15th and 16th. Looking for her Series A, and you're not allowed to talk about those things, but I can mention it on our podcast. So stop in and see her at AstraZeneca. But more importantly, we want to wish you the best of luck in the future. You're doing a fantastic job and keep up the good work and stand for what Sisu stands for.
Exactly. Thank you, Rich. I'm really excited to be here, and I'm glad to share a few words of wisdom, hopefully that some of the fellow entrepreneurs can learn from.
Thank you, Carolyn.
Thanks for listening to BioTalk with Rich Bendis.